Good morning, grade 5. Today is March 22, 2020. And then our topic for today is chapter 5, lesson 5. What is climate? You can open your book in 231 for your reference. Okay, average weather. Didn't you know, girls, that weather and climate is two different words? Weather is a condition of the atmosphere in hourly or in daily basis, while climate describes the weather condition over a long period of time, at least an average of 30 years. So climate is also changing in an average of 30 years according to meteorologists. So here in your book, we have your sequoia tree. Sequoia tree are able to live for thousands of years because of the climate remains nearly steady where it grows. Where does sequoia tree grows? Okay, particularly it is growing in western Sierra Nevada, California. So the weather condition here, and then the climate condition here so far is not changing. It's good. It's an advantage to sequoia tree because uh, it needs a humid weather. So some giant sequoia tree have been alive for 1,000 years. It's because of the climate also. The weather condition here is stable. But in question number 1 says here, how do you know that this is a good climate for the giant sequoia tree? As I mentioned, the climate is a good for giant sequoia tree because they are able to live for a long time. So thank God that the area here is not affected. It's not too affected in climate change because until now it's an evidence that in that area that the sequoia tree is still growing. It keeps on thriving in a good condition. It's because of the good weather condition in that area. So that is a proof that the climate is changing in long years, while weather is changing from time to time and in daily basis. So that is good for plants. Because try to imagine, girls, if in the weather in Sierra Nevada, California changes, that will affect the sequoia trees because sequoia trees needs a humid area. It needs a humid environment. So if the weather and then the climate change in that area, that will affect the growth of sequoia tree. Try to imagine if you try to swap the climate of Saudi Arabia and California. Do you think it will affect the growth of sequoia tree? Yes, of course, it will affect because, as I've said, in Sierra Nevada it's humid, while in Saudi sometimes it's humid here in Saudi, but most of the time we have a dry season here, dry cold and dry summer. So if you're trying to swap the climate in California, Sierra Nevada, and Saudi Arabia, that would affect greatly the growth of sequoia tree. Let's go to the next page. Factors that might affect the climate. The first factor that might affect the climate is the latitude. Okay, latitude here, that is the line that draws how far you are from the equator. So this line, this line, this line, this line is an example of latitude. I know you learn it from social. So latitude is a measure of how far you are from the equator. So this line is the equator. This is the latitude. Okay. This color shows you if you are near the equator, if your country or your continent is near the equator, your climate possibly will be hot. Okay? Because the heat directly shines or shines in this area. If your continent or your country is in this place, the green one, okay, so your climate will be temperate, meaning Not too cold, not too hot. But if your continent or if your country is here in the North Pole or in the South Pole, your climate will be freezing cold. So, the latitude will, if you are near the equator, that tells you what is your climate in your region. If you are near, your climate will be hot. If you are in between the South and North Pole and then the equator, your area will be temperate. Temperate meaning mild. Okay? So if you're far away from the equator, your climate will be freezing cold or cold. Okay? So let's try to do this. Number 2. Why are the polar regions usually cold? Underline one statement that supports your answer. Here is one statement that can support that one. The sun's energy is less directly in the winter, which causes the winter to be colder. So that is it. If you try to look at that one in illustration, so here is the sun, and then remember that the earth is tilted. Okay, that is not tilted meaning it's not directly straight standing there or orbiting. It's tilted in the orbit like this. It's kind of slant. Tilt means slant. Okay, so equator is here in the middle. So the area around this area is really hot. Like this, the red one, the red shows you the area near the equator will have a hot temperature. So here, because it's directly heated by the sun, while the country and then the continent along the North and South Pole will be colder because the heat is not directly shining in this part. Okay, let's go to number 6. Write 2 words to describe each climate zone. So this is the North Pole region or the polar zone. It will be cold and icy, or you could also write freezing. The temperate zone is changing and mild. And then the tropical zone will be warm and sunny or hot because it's in the equator zone. And then here, temperate, and then in the south polar region it will be freezing cold also. Number 4, justify. Deciduous trees have leaves that fall off during some season. Might you find deciduous trees in the tropical zone? So deciduous tree is growing in the temperate zone. Deciduous tree are the trees here. If you try to look at this one, okay, we have here the orange and then the green one. The question here says, might you find deciduous trees in the tropical zone? Tropical zone is here. And then here is the temperate zone. Can you find a deciduous tree here? The answer is no. Why? The temperature does not change much during the year because in the tropical area, the season is the same all throughout the year. But here, you have here the 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. But in the tropical, you only have 2 seasons, the summer and then the rainy season. But here you have the 4 seasons. Okay? Now, let's go here. The bodies of water. Didn't you know, girls, that the bodies of the water could also affect the climate? Here it says, remember that the bodies of water become warmer and cool more slowly than the land. Because of this, the temperature of the air near the water does not change quickly as in inland. In the winter, large beaches often do not get as cold as areas just few miles inland. In the summer, the air over the beach is often cooler than the air over as inland. Let's try to look at this one. Here you have Maryland. These 2 states is in United States of America. Maryland is near the coast or near the bodies of water, and then here is Kansas. So this is coastline and then this is inland. Okay. The question here is, think of the effect of the ocean, would Kansas be warmer or colder into Maryland? Would Kansas be warmer or colder than in Maryland in the winter? Explain. It will be warmer because it is further from the ocean. Of course, here it says in your book that bodies of water become warm or cooler more slowly. So here, since Maryland is near the bodies of water, it will be colder compared to this one. Okay, elevation. Another factor that affects the climate is the elevation. Elevation is how high the place above the sea level. Mountain ranges may have different climates compared to the areas around them. If your place is near, or if your place is elevated, or if your place is in highland, your place temperature will be different from the place in the lowland. The higher you are, the colder. At the same time, the moist of the area is different also. Let's try to look at this one. Valdivia, Chile is placed near the coastline, near the water area. And then Plaza Hincul in Argentina is an inland place, meaning it's in the land, while Valdivia, it's near the water area. These two places is in South America. The question here is, draw an arrow that show how wind flow between the cities shown in the map. Okay, so we have drawn here because here, girls, remember that the air is circulating, right? So the wind here in the water could passes in the land. So what will happen? Air passes over Valdivia first because here Valdivia is near the water area. It gets the most rain. Why? Because remember in your water cycle topic, if your place is near the water area, you will receive a lot of precipitation. So since Valdivia, Chile is near the water, it receives more precipitation. Look at the amount of rain in a year, 2,593. If you're trying to put a rain gauge in this area, okay, they measure in 1 year, the amount of rain is 2,593 millimeter of rain. Compare here in Plaza Hincul, Argentina, the amount of rain in 1 year is 132 only. Why? Because it says here, if you are near the water area, your precipitation will be higher compared to the inland. Okay, so elevation could also affect the climate of the area. Let's go here to the last page. You take a bus trip along Florida coast from Miami in North Jacksonville. What temperature change would you expect? Explain. The change in latitude might cause the decrease in temperature. The bus moves away from the equator. So if you try to look at that one, we have here the map. North America and South America. Where is Miami? Miami is here near the equator, where Southville is across the equator. So let's try to look at this one. Remember, Miami is in the equator side and Jacksonville is across. So it says in your book that the latitude is one of the factors changing the climate. So if you try to travel here from Miami going to Jacksonville, there is a change of temperature. Miami is near the equator, which is hot, and Jacksonville is across the equator. So there is a change of temperature, meaning it will be colder when you travel. And then here in question number 8, name 3 factors that can influence climate: latitude, elevation, and distance from the water. Thank you for listening, girls. For your question, you can post it in my WhatsApp or in Clasera. Thank you.